Hello, Michael Swain here after Kansas basketball's 78-66 loss to Duke in the Champions Classic. And that was a lot more of a competitive game than I was expecting going into it. Obviously, Kansas is shorthanded without Darryn Peterson, who misses his third straight game with a hamstring strain, now is what Kansas is calling it. And going in, I thought KU would struggle to keep it within 20. Duke is that talented, and I wasn't sure what to expect from Kansas because it had been a little ugly against Princeton. It had been a little ugly against Texas A&M, but tonight you saw some of the pieces, I think, of what this Kansas team can be. And if you want to project it forward, you can think about what it could be with Darryn Peterson and what he can help alleviate maybe some of the stresses that were put on Kansas in the game tonight. So look, top to bottom, I think it's more of an encouraging performance than a discouraging performance for KU. And I think the competitive nature that KU showed, especially in the first 10 minutes or so of the game before foul trouble started to catch up to KU, was exactly the blueprint for Kansas for the rest of the year. You play competitive defense, you get in passing lanes, you create transition opportunities. That's what this Kansas team has to be. It has to be a scrappy team. It's not going to go out and, shoot more threes than anyone else. It's not going to go out and throw it to Flory Badunga in the post. KU's not going to, be a team that's going to necessarily out execute you consistently. It's going to come down to effort, and it's going to come down to playing in passing lanes. I think that's exactly what you saw early in the game. KU did a great job of keeping Duke out of the paint. When Duke got in the paint, Flory Badunga had done a really nice job early on, I think, of protecting the rim. And that's what allowed KU to really get some of those easy buckets early in the game, right? It's picking up the pace. When there's a chance to run, you run. And man, Trey White was such a crucial part of that early in the game. And I think he was KU's best player far and away tonight. You can look at the stat line that he was able to provide KU with, and you'll take that every game from Trey White. You're not going to get it, but you take it. 22 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, and it's sustainable points, at least in my opinion, where it wasn't Trey White's just chucking up tough shots and making stuff out of the blue. How did he score tonight? Off cuts, in transition, in the half court at times, but not consistently, where that wasn't the one thing he was doing. So this is the type of game from him where you're saying, okay, can you do this with Darryn Peterson back? And I think the answer to that is yes. And that's one of the biggest takeaways, I think, from this game is the fact that you're starting to see some guys show up for Kansas that when Darryn Peterson gets back for KU, that they can provide some consistent level of play. I think Flory Badunga, after really struggling against North Carolina, right? Vishar really gave him a hard time with his ability to stretch the floor, play on the perimeter, knock down threes. I thought tonight Flory was so much better and played, I think, with great energy and intensity. There's a great clip in the second half, right? KU's in the huddle, the middle of the fight, right? And the camera's kind of showing self, but you see Flory in the corner there, and he's just smiling, right? The guys embrace that competitive nature, and that's what you wanted to see in a game like this. So for Flory to bounce back after, I think, a really rough game against North Carolina, had a decent last week to then put together a performance like this to manage some of the foul trouble. We'll talk about the foul trouble in a second, but to manage some of that in the second half too, I thought showed real growth from him. So those two players, I think, deserve immense praise for their performance, and I think they're the guys that you leave the game feeling the best about their ability to replicate what they showed tonight over the course of the season. Now, the game itself changed when foul trouble started to come into play. You can look at Flory Badunga when he sat with 2 fouls. That was when everything changed. I believe it was a 15-2 run for Duke during that period when Flory was on the bench. And what happened? All of a sudden, Duke's able to get to the paint. They're pump faking because there's not really much of a concern of a elite shot blocker. For as good as Bryson Tiller has been, he's not that guy. He is not an elite shot blocker. He's going to alter shots consistently. And they started to pump fake and get guys to bite, get to the free throw line, get easy points. And look, the second foul on Flory is Elmarko Jackson's fault. He's got to go and foul him harder. You can't put your big man in that position. I think you saw Self on the sideline get, frustrated with Elmarko right after that play. But then you can look in the second half, right? Obviously, Bryson Tiller fouls out in the end. Flory picks up the 4th foul. Bill Self trusts him, which I thought was a very interesting development after he did in the first half. Did he have much of a choice in the second half? Probably not at that point in the game. You need to roll with your guys, and if he fouls out, he fouls out, right? KU's probably not winning if he's sitting on the bench, and so you got to play him. And I thought that it was an interesting decision in the first half for Self to go ahead and sit Trey White, Flory Badunga, and Bryson Tiller all at the same time. And he went with a lineup that I'm not sure we'll ever see again this year from Kansas that included, I believe it was right, it was Melvin Council, Marco Jackson, Jamari McDowell, and Paul Mbia were the group, and Cole Rosario was there too. It was an ugly lineup, and it got beat for a couple possessions before Self went back to putting Trey White in the game. So, look, at the end of the day, getting Darryn Peterson healthy is what matters for Kansas. Kansas is not going to achieve what it wants to achieve without Darryn Peterson healthy. But I think you're starting to see some of the vision come together for Kansas in a game like this, where the blueprint is there. And you can imagine how plugging in Darryn Peterson into that would really change things. And here's a great example. In the final 5 minutes of the game, or I guess 4 minutes, 59 seconds of the game, Kansas did not make a field goal. And at one point, KU got to a 3-point game, I believe. What's going to happen when Darryn Peterson is back? It's not Melvin Council handling the basketball. It's not Trey White having to create for himself. It's going to be in the hands of the guy that is probably going to be the number one pick in the NBA draft. And that's going to be a much different, I think, outcome for Kansas, where I would not expect KU to go on a 5-minute field goal-less drought in crunch time of a game with Darryn Peterson on the floor. And so that's where games are going to be won and lost for KU. It's going to be a team that's going to play in a lot of close games because of the nature of the way they play. They don't shoot a lot of threes, so there's not going to be a lot of variance games, right, where KU's going to go crazy from three and just blow teams out because that happens. It's going to be a team that's going to have to come down to effort and playing really good defense. And I think at times tonight you saw that. But at times also you saw some of the shortcomings in terms of the depth at guard. What are you getting from Marco Jackson? Not much. KU needs its starters to stay out of foul trouble. But again, big picture, this is the type of performance that leaves me much more encouraged because you're seeing the vision for what this team can be. And so for KU now, it's a time to get some time off. They will play on Monday against Notre Dame in the Players Era. Chance for 3 games in 3 days. Just my instinct, be surprised if Darryn Peterson plays because those it's just too many games in too short of a period of time. Maybe he'll get another week off, be ready for UConn after that. So look, what matters for KU right now is, can you hold firm while Peterson doesn't play? Can you go and beat a Notre Dame and a Syracuse without him? I think the answer to that is yes, but KU has to play well as a collective team like they did tonight. And if they do, they'll be all right. But it's one of those where you just got to hold firm until Peterson's back. And then from there, it's all about getting as many reps as possible before Big 12 play starts. So look, overall, much more encouraging game than I was expecting when we turned on the TV tonight. So it's going to make for a really interesting season, and just getting Darryn Peterson back is going to be the biggest key. So that's what I got. Make sure you like the channel, subscribe to the video. That's not right. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment, give me your thoughts on the game. Interested to see what you all think. That's what we got tonight. We'll be back after the Iowa State game for plenty of thoughts on Kansas football. Thanks so much for watching.